Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Want to know how to prune raspberries? Today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know so you can prune with confidence. We grow two kinds of raspberries in these two long raised beds. Red raspberries and gold raspberries, and oh my are they tasty. But this time of year they look pretty awful, so today's task is to get them pruned. These upright stems are called canes and they live for 2 years. The first year they're called primo canes. If you think about primo, that means one. So it's the first year, and the only thing they need to do is to grow a whole bunch of leaves. That way they can conduct photosynthesis and put on a lot of energy so they can produce berries in the second year. The second year cane is called a flora cane. If you think of flora, that means flower. So these canes are going to bloom and set fruit. When you have a flora cane that has borne fruit, at the end of that year or during the winter or next spring, those are the ones you're going to cut down to the ground. But this one, I can tell it is a primo cane this year. It's going to produce next year. I know that because I do not see any little berry stems or dried up flowers. So this one does not get cut down to the ground because then I'm eliminating my produce for next year. If I look at, let's see, here's another one. I'll show you a close-up of it. This obviously produced this year because it has little berry stems on here that we harvested from and enjoyed. Here's a close-up of what I was talking about. You see these little stems here? These are what we pulled those luscious raspberries off this summer. That makes this a flora cane, the second year cane. It is in the process of dying back down to the roots, which means we need to cut it down to the ground because it will not do anything else for this plant. Well, that didn't exactly go according to plan. All of a sudden we had a huge downpour yesterday and it went on for hours, so I had to give up all plans of pruning the raspberries. So let's pick up from where we left off, and it is very cold and breezy today, so bear with me. So when do you prune raspberries anyway? Well, the best time is in late fall, or you can do them in winter or very early spring. But mainly what you're looking for is the leaves on the flora canes, the ones that bore this year, to turn brown. As long as they're green, that means they're still conducting photosynthesis and putting energy into the roots of the plants. Whenever I'm pruning raspberry canes, the first thing I do is I look at the plant, I kind of follow it up, and you can see this one is kind of fallen over, but I do see those little berry stems on there, so I know this one produced this year. So you need to follow it down to the base of the plant and clip it off. Here's another one. I can see that it produced this year. So you just follow it back, prune them down as low as you can to the soil surface. Here's another one. But it's really important that you follow the cane all the way up to make sure that you really are going to prune off something that bore this year. You certainly don't want to cut back any of the primo canes from this year because they're going to produce next year. Another thing that's okay to do is if you have what seems like a really spindly raspberry cane, just go ahead and snip it off at the ground because they're never going to get any bigger. Now you'll notice this end of the bed is starting to look a little less crowded and chaotic, and that's great. And you're probably feeling pretty good that, okay, primo canes, leave them alone. And the second year of a primo cane is the flora cane. That's the one that bore, and that's the one you're pruning back down to the ground. Well, I have a couple of exceptions to the rules I gave you, and isn't that always the way? So the first thing I wanted to mention, most of what's left here, I've missed a couple old canes, but are the primo canes, so this year's growth. Now you can see some of these are quite tall, and I worry about them whipping around in the winter winds. Actually, they're starting to do it right now. It is perfectly fine to cut them back maybe to like about 6 feet, maybe 5 feet even, just to keep them down in a little bit closer and be at less risk of damage. So here's another one. Look how tall that grew. So I'm just going to cut them off between about 5.5 and 6 feet and just get things to be a little safer during our winter. Those look pretty good, but that will help as well. Now let me tell you about the other exception to the rule. It's unfortunately a little bit confusing, but it is something you need to know. Remember at the beginning of this video how I said we grow 2 different types of raspberries, red raspberries and gold raspberries? Well, fall gold is specifically the name of the variety, and this is one of them right here. Now most raspberries will just bear one time during their lives, and again as a flora cane in that second year. Fall gold is one of the raspberries that is an exception to the rule, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it. So what it will do in its first year as a primo cane, I realize this goes against the rules, in the fall it gives us a crop of berries, and it's really great. But then what it does again the second year as a flora cane is it gives us another crop of berries in the summer. How cool is that? But it makes it really challenging to know, especially this time of year, is this one that's totally done bearing? Do I just go ahead and cut it down at the ground level? Or should I leave it because maybe it's going to bear next year? Well, I have an extremely easy solution to this. I don't prune them back in the fall at all. And then what I do in early spring is I'll come with some pruners and I'll snip off a top part of the cane, and I'll look at the central tissue and see if it's green. If it is, that means it's going to give us another harvest in the summer. And so I just leave it alone. But if it's completely brown and dead, then yes, it is going to be trimmed back down to the ground. I hope that makes sense, but I do want to make sure that you understand there is a difference, so you need to know the kind of raspberries you're dealing with before you do any pruning. Well, I'm going to clean up these canes from the first bed before I proceed to the second one, and it is freezing out here. I do hope that this video was helpful and that I didn't confuse you in any way. It's always hard when there's exceptions to the rule, you know? But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop me an email, and my email address is at the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you next week.